Hi everybody, Michael here from Christ of England. Today's video I'm going to explain Britain is broken but we are like the prodigal son in terms of the UK is beaten and broken down, but the answer to our problems is to return to our spiritual father, but it must be done in the correct way. I need people to listen to this message. This movement and the story of what we're doing here is not about individuals, it's about the Spirit of Christ and the truth of Christ and the Father, because that's how we can solve all our problems in this country. And I wanted to do this video because I've set up the Christ of England, but people are going to ask, well, what's the Christ of England about? Who am I? Why did I set it up? And that's what I'm going to explain in this video. And this message is incredibly important because this is the solution to our problems, the Christ of England, in terms of it's about Christ, the spiritual truth and the Father. And I've done this video a couple of times and I ended up wittering on too much about dogma and stuff. So I'm going to try and keep it as simple as possible. And essentially, where we are now is our country is messed up and it's completely beaten and broken down and it's an absolute mess. And it is sort of where I was when I was 25 years old. I am now almost 40, so 15 years ago. And when I was 25 years old, I lived a complete normie life, happy life, you know, working class family, went to school, went to college, got a job when I was 18, office job till I was 25. And 18, you go out drinking, partying, having fun, holidays, playing football every week, just a usual normal life. But when I was 25, I suddenly woke up in terms of red pill style, not spiritually, but red pill. I was like, well, why am I doing this office job? I don't really enjoy it. I'm getting up every day. It's boring. There must be more to life. So I started working on a few things to do myself so I can end up quitting my job. But when I was 25, I ended up quitting my job and I was excited, all these new things happening. But that year, I was like Job in the Bible. If you know the story of Job, everything in Job's life goes wrong and he's completely beaten and broken down. You know, in the story of Job, he ends up with like blotches all over his skin. And funny, that's what happened to me. I had some weird virus. Like at first I thought I had like a mosquito bite, but then I had a mosquito bites started going up my arm and I had it all over my body. And I'm not joking, for about 6 to 9 months I essentially had what felt like mosquito bites all over my body, itching like bad. And I was literally the story of Job. I went to the doctors, they couldn't understand what it was. They were like, well, you must have got some weird virus or something. You know, I don't know, in the world there's all these weird midges and stuff biting people, giving them weird things, but essentially, I was like Job. You know, I was in debt. I ended up, my work, I couldn't do my work, so I ended up not being able to do my work. And family and friends at the time were like, they said I shouldn't have quit my job previously. So I didn't really have much help from them. And then I had a load of other things that went wrong, which was going to affect my future going forward. And along with waking up every day in physical pain all over your body, honestly, for about certain months, you do consider what's the point of living in many ways. But fortunately, I've got a strong spirit and a never say die attitude. And that's why I believe the attitude we need in this country to save the country, that I hung on in there like Job. And now I'm going to be of service to my Father. Because what this led to, the reason I tell you this is when you're beaten and broken down and there's nobody to turn to, you start seeking higher things. And I went on the internet and started saying what to do when your life's completely destroyed and you're at rock bottom. And I started watching videos from these sort of Indian spiritual gurus. And as they were speaking, light bulbs started going off in my head and it was resonating with my spirit. And I'm not going to go into too much details, but this set me on the path. And I started listening to the spiritual masters from India, started getting into Buddhism. And I then started fasting, mainly fasting for my physical health to help me overcome that virus. But then also I was learning to meditate to help me relax my mind from all the stress and sort of depressive state I was in. So in a weird way, all the stars aligned. That the fact I was doing loads of fasting and meditating, not for any spiritual reasons, for fleshly reasons, but then I was learning from all the spiritual masters. I believe this awakened my spirit. And then I became born again as a spirit. And I started studying near-death experiences and all these people talking about how when they died, their spirit rose and they went into the hands of the loving Father, and that God, the true Father, is not the religious God. he's a loving father. And then I learnt about Jesus, and I heard Jesus talking about a loving father. And I learnt all the parables, but I understood the parables from a spiritual point of view, not from the physical point of view. And I started to realize, the religious people have basically misunderstood Christ's spiritual wisdom. And because before, Christianity didn't make any sense, because I was like, well, did Jesus really walk on water? Did Jesus heal the blind? Did he bring Lazarus back from the dead? Did Jesus physically rise, and he's physically waiting, and he's going to come back in his same physical body? I was like, it just doesn't make any sense to me. But then I understood, they're parables and they're analogies for spiritual wisdom. So when Jesus healed the blind, he was talking about healing the spiritually blind. And that makes sense, because shortly after Jesus healed the blind man, he goes to the Pharisees, and the Pharisees say, you're claiming you healed this man of his blindness. And Jesus says, well, you are also blind. He says that to the Pharisees. So obviously we know the Pharisees weren't physically blind. So it makes sense that Jesus was healing the spiritually blind. And then Jesus walking on water is about having faith. And bringing Lazarus back from the dead, I reckon Lazarus was not physically dead. He was spiritually dead and depressed, like I was. But then when the Spirit of Christ came along into my life, it pulled me out of the death that I was in. And I resurrected back to the Christ and the Father. That makes so much more sense to me than all the crazy stories about, Jesus having to be sent as a blood sacrifice because God's an angry God and we're rebellious and all this stuff. But I'm not going to go too much into the dogma, but I believe that I have came to the spiritual truth. I am reborn again in the Spirit, and the Spirit is representative of Christ. And now that is what the Christ of England represents. And I look at the religious leaders and I can see what Jesus saw. I'm like, they're blind fools. They don't know what they're talking about. And a lot of Christians and people, Muslims, argue with me on my other YouTube channel. If you want to learn more about what I talk about, go and subscribe. The link in the description. The channel's called Flesh to the Father. That's where if you want to argue about dogma, we can do it there. But I realised, like Jesus, they're blind fools. And religious people get upset and argue with me probably the same way that they argue with Jesus. They say the same things to me. You're heretical. You're contradicting the Bible. Or be careful, you're falling to, like you're saying is like Satan. You're deceived by Satan. But that's exactly what they accused Jesus of. They said to Jesus, you're being heretical because you're contradicting eye for an eye. Jesus contradicted him when he didn't stone the sinful woman, the adulterous woman. And they said to Jesus, you're working for Beelzebub. So my question to all the religious people is, be careful who you follow. They warn me, be careful, you're dangerous ground. But I've returned to the true Father and Christ. So I have no doubts about my soul, because it's in the hands of God. But I'm telling you, come and follow the truth of Christ. 2,000 years ago, all the religious people who criticize me now, they'd have persecuted Jesus. They would have said, you're a heretic, you're working for Satan and all this stuff. Whereas that's why I set up the Christ of England. The Christ of England is to represent and follow the truth of Christ. The Church of England, if it was of the truth, Christians always say to me, you're a liar, the church is where the truth is at. Well, if the church is of the truth, why has the church been corrupted? The truth of Christ would never be corrupted. And Jesus said, you'll know them by their fruits. The Church of England are welcoming Muslims into the church in terms of, do your Ramadan festival in our church. The Church of England are promoting open borders. The Church of England are promoting reparations. The Church of England are promoting all the woke agendas. They have gay priests and they're working tranny hour in the church. The Catholic Church are working for open borders as well. They're going along a lot with the globalist agenda. So, you'll know them by their fruits. So, that's why I set up the Christ of England. Let's see the fruits that we bear and judge me and this organisation by the fruits that we bear. Because at the moment, the church, they're not bearing fruits. So I'm not here to be rude to Christians. This Christ of England is for everybody. It's for atheists, it's for Christians, it's for all the English and British people, for all good people, all the good migrants as well. It's for everybody who wants to do righteousness and serve England with the power of Christ. That's what this movement is about. So I don't want to argue too much about theology, but I believe that we should judge them by their fruits. And that's the point of the Christ of England. And as I said, with me, I was beaten and broken down. But once I returned to the Father, like the prodigal son, my life has been amazing ever since. And whilst this world is hard and it's been very tough going through all the COVID and all the brainwashed people, and there's been loads of difficult times, because I'm born again of the Spirit, I can handle it. And I'm not saying that life's going to be easy, but I'm saying that you have the spiritual power to overcome the problems. And to be honest, a load of my problems in the world is not to do with me, it's to do with the fact that the world is blind and I suffer because I see so much suffering. And that's the story. Jesus wept. Jesus wept because he saw all the suffering and he wanted to help people. And that's what the Christ of England is about. I don't want to see so many British people suffering and depressed and being abused by the system and the country going to hell in a handbasket. I don't like seeing young girls, abused in multiple ways, as we've seen. We need to sort these problems out. That's what the Christ of England is all about. And to finish the video, this is the answer. What we need in this country and what I want to provide here is a spiritual revolution. So all that spirit fasting and meditation I did, I want to get people to do, and then that will awaken the spirit in all of us. And then through that spiritual revolution, and we'll encourage more spiritual values in the Christ of England and people who become part of the Christ of England. I'm going to do a set of commandments and values that we follow. So at the Christ of England, you represent Christ and the Father. You believe in family values. We are for sensible migration policies. We believe in masculinity, and we want to set up a warrior division and be loyalty to our families, our wives, our husbands, for the women, and our society. Maybe homeschooling parts, we could set up homeschools and Christ camps in the summer, so children can, in half terms and school holidays, the children can come to these camps and be taught the spiritual truth of Christ, but also to enjoy and be educated away from the Marxist system into sensible truth and patriotism and the knowledge of God. And there's multiple ideas that I have that I'll explain in more detail going forward. But that's essentially all I want to say for this video, is to understand what the Christ of England is about, why I set it up, who I am, and the prodigal son. That parable is how we save our country. Don't rely on the politicians, don't rely on all these other people. We can only rely on a spiritual revolution through Christ and his Spirit to the Father. And once we do that, we can make our country good. So that's pretty much what I want to say in this video. I don't want to go on any longer. If you like and are interested in what I'm saying here, as I say, everybody's welcome, atheist, Christian. This is simply about making England better with the power of the Spirit. And everybody's welcome. So subscribe to the channel, stay in tune. I'm going to be providing more details and more educational content going forward, because I think education is very important for the people of our country. Once we educate them as to the dangers and the truth, we'll be able to heal our country. Like the video if you like it, share it with as many people as you can, and we will make our country better with the power of Christ and the Father. God bless everybody. Goodbye.